They mocked the principal's daughter. Now they'll pay the ultimate price. Maya Rodriguez had always been the quiet one at Jefferson High School, content to blend into the background with her oversized sweaters and worn-out sneakers. At 17, she was small for her age, barely 5 feet tall, with dark hair that she kept pulled back in a simple ponytail and glasses that seemed too big for her delicate face. Most students barely noticed her as she moved through the hallways like a shadow, clutching her books close to her chest and keeping her eyes down. What they didn't know was that Maya was Principal Rodriguez's daughter, a secret she'd kept hidden since starting at Jefferson 3 years ago, when her mother had been promoted to run the school. The bullying had started subtly at first. Jake Morrison, the star quarterback with his perfectly styled blonde hair and cocky smirk, had begun targeting Maya during lunch periods. He was flanked by his 2 loyal followers, Trevor Walsh, a lanky basketball player with a cruel streak, and Danny Chen, a wrestler who enjoyed using his strength to intimidate smaller students. They'd started with small things, knocking her books out of her hands in the hallway, making snide comments about her appearance, and ensuring she had nowhere to sit in the cafeteria. Maya endured it all in silence, knowing that revealing her connection to the principal would only make things worse. Her mother, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, was a strict disciplinarian who had earned respect through her firm but fair leadership. Maya couldn't bear the thought of students treating her differently because of her mother's position, nor could she risk undermining her mother's authority by appearing to receive special treatment. The harassment escalated gradually over several weeks. In the gymnasium during lunch break, Jake would deliberately throw basketballs in Maya's direction when she tried to find a quiet corner to read. In the science hallway, Trevor would shoulder check her into lockers, sending her books and papers scattering across the floor. Danny would corner her in empty classrooms, using his imposing presence to make her feel trapped and helpless. Other students watched but said nothing. Some looked uncomfortable, shifting their gazes away when Maya's eyes met theirs, but none intervened. The teachers who witnessed the incidents seemed to view them as typical teenage behavior, not worth addressing. Maya felt increasingly isolated, wondering if anyone would ever stand up for her or if she would have to endure this treatment until graduation. The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon in late October. Maya was walking through the main hallway after school, heading toward her mother's office, where she usually waited for a ride home. The hallway was mostly empty, except for a few students at their lockers and some faculty members preparing to leave. Maya's mother had just stepped out of her office, wearing her favorite navy blue dress, the one she'd bought for important school board meetings. She was carrying a stack of papers and seemed preoccupied with weekend preparations. Jake, Trevor, and Danny emerged from around the corner, clearly looking for trouble. They'd been in detention for most of the week and were in particularly foul moods. When they spotted Maya, Jake's face lit up with malicious glee. "Well, well, look who we have here," Jake called out, his voice echoing in the nearly empty hallway. "Little mouse Maya, scurrying around after school like always." Maya quickened her pace, hoping to reach her mother's office before the situation escalated. But Trevor stepped into her path, blocking her way, while Danny flanked her from the other side. "Where do you think you're going, mouse?" Trevor sneered. "We're not done talking to you yet." Principal Rodriguez looked up from her papers, immediately sensing tension in the hallway. She saw 3 large boys surrounding a smaller student and began walking toward them, her heels clicking authoritatively on the linoleum floor. "What's going on here?" she asked in her firm, principal voice, the one that usually sent troublemakers scattering. Jake turned toward her with his most innocent expression. "Nothing at all, Principal Rodriguez. We were just having a friendly conversation with Maya here about her homework." But Danny had a different idea. Perhaps emboldened by the week's frustrations or simply carried away by the group dynamic, he reached out and grabbed at Maya's backpack, trying to yank it away from her. Maya stumbled backward, directly into Principal Rodriguez. who was now standing just behind her. In the ensuing chaos, Danny's flailing arm caught the hem of Principal Rodriguez's dress. The fabric, already strained by the sudden movement, began to tear with a loud ripping sound that echoed through the hallway. The tear ran from the hem nearly to the knee, exposing the principal's legs in a way that was both embarrassing and completely inappropriate. The hallway fell silent. The few remaining students and faculty members stopped what they were doing, staring in shock at what had just occurred. Principal Rodriguez looked down at her torn dress, her face cycling through emotions: surprise, embarrassment, and then a cold, controlled fury that Maya had never seen before. "Danny Chen," Principal Rodriguez said in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. "You have just made the biggest mistake of your academic career." Danny's face went pale as he realized what he'd done. I didn't mean to. It was an accident." "An accident?" Principal Rodriguez's voice rose slightly, still controlled, but with an edge that made everyone in the hallway take a step back. "You were harassing a student, physically intimidating her, and in the process, you assaulted a school administrator. That's not an accident, Mr. Chen. That's a series of deliberate choices." Jake tried to salvage the situation. "Principal Rodriguez, we were just fooling around. Nobody meant any harm." "Fooling around?" The principal's eyes blazed. "Mr. Morrison, are you telling me that cornering a student in the hallway, blocking her path and intimidating her constitutes fooling around in your mind?" Maya watched in amazement as her mother transformed before her eyes. This wasn't the warm, caring woman who made her breakfast every morning or helped her with homework at the kitchen table. This was Principal Rodriguez in full disciplinary mode, a force of nature that Maya had heard about but never witnessed firsthand. "All three of you in my office now." The command was delivered with such authority that even Jake, the school's golden boy, didn't dare argue. As they filed into the principal's office, Maya followed at a distance. She'd never seen her mother this angry, and she was both terrified and fascinated by the display of power. Principal Rodriguez closed the door behind them and immediately picked up her phone. "Mrs. Patterson, please call Mr. Morrison's parents, Mr. Walsh's parents, and Mr. Chen's parents. Tell them they need to come to school immediately for an emergency meeting regarding their son's behavior. Also, please contact the school district's disciplinary coordinator. We're going to need documentation for what's about to happen." The three boys exchanged nervous glances. They were beginning to understand that this wasn't going to be resolved with a simple detention or a warning. "Sit down," Principal Rodriguez commanded, pointing to the three chairs arranged in front of her desk. "All of you." As they sat, she remained standing, her torn dress a constant reminder of what had transpired. She pulled out a thick folder from her desk drawer and opened it, revealing pages of documented incidents. "Let's start with you, Mr. Morrison," she said, her voice now deadly calm. "October 15th, witnessed by Mrs. Thompson, throwing food at Maya Rodriguez in the cafeteria. October 18th, reported by the janitor, deliberately knocking books out of her hands in the hallway. October 22nd, observed by Coach Martinez, verbal harassment during lunch period in the gymnasium." Jake's confident facade began to crumble as he realized that his actions had been documented all along. "Mr. Walsh," she continued, turning to Trevor, "October 14th, 16th, 20th, and 23rd, physical intimidation, deliberate shoulder checking, and verbal harassment of the same student. Your behavior has been noted and recorded by multiple staff members." Trevor slumped in his chair, understanding that his actions had consequences he hadn't anticipated. "And Mr. Chen," she said, fixing Danny with a stare that could have frozen fire. "Not only do you have a similar record of harassment and intimidation, but you've now graduated to physical assault of a school administrator." Danny opened his mouth to protest, but Principal Rodriguez held up her hand. "I'm not finished. What you three don't understand is that bullying is not just a school policy violation. In this state, systematic harassment and intimidation of another student constitutes criminal behavior. The assault on my person just now has elevated this from a disciplinary matter to a legal one. The reality of their situation began to sink in. These weren't just school consequences anymore. Principal Rodriguez continued, "Each of you will be suspended immediately, pending a full investigation. The suspension will remain on your permanent records. Mr. Morrison, this means you're off the football team, and your college recruiters will be notified of your disciplinary status. Mr. Walsh, you're off the basketball team, and your scholarship applications will include documentation of this incident. Mr. Chen, you're banned from all athletic activities, and your wrestling scholarship to State University is now in jeopardy." The boys' faces went white. Their futures, which had seemed so secure just moments before, were now crumbling around them. "But that's not all," Principal Rodriguez said, picking up her phone again. "I'm also calling the police to file a report for the assault. Danny, you laid hands on a school official, and that's a crime regardless of whether it was intentional or not." Danny began to shake. "Please, Principal Rodriguez, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. It really was an accident." "Your intent is irrelevant, Mr. Chen. Your actions have consequences, and those consequences are not negotiable." Within an hour, the school was buzzing with activity. Parents arrived looking confused and angry. Police officers came to take statements. The district disciplinary coordinator arrived with a briefcase full of paperwork. Maya watched it all unfold from the outer office, still hardly believing what she was witnessing. The meeting with the parents was brutal. Principal Rodriguez laid out the documented evidence of systematic bullying, explained the legal ramifications of assault on a school official, and detailed the consequences that would follow. Jake's father, a prominent local businessman, tried to minimize the situation, suggesting that boys will be boys, and that perhaps the punishment was excessive. Principal Rodriguez's response was swift and merciless. "Mr. Morrison, your son has been systematically tormenting another student for weeks. The documentation I have shows a clear pattern of escalating harassment. This isn't boys being boys. This is criminal behavior that has been allowed to continue unchecked. If you're not prepared to address your son's actions seriously, then you're part of the problem." Trevor's mother tried a different approach, claiming that her son was usually well-behaved and that this must be a misunderstanding. Principal Rodriguez produced video evidence from the school's security cameras, showing Trevor deliberately shoulder-checking Maya in the hallway. "Mrs. Walsh, there's no misunderstanding here. Your son has been caught on camera multiple times, engaging in aggressive behavior toward a fellow student. The evidence is clear and undeniable." Danny's parents were devastated. They had immigrated to the country with dreams of their son receiving a college education through his wrestling abilities. Now those dreams were shattered. "Please," Danny's father pleaded, "he's a good boy. He just made a mistake. Don't ruin his future over one moment of poor judgment." Principal Rodriguez's expression softened slightly, but her resolve remained firm. "Mr. Chen, I understand your concern for your son's future, but his actions have consequences not just for him, but for the student he's been tormenting. Maya Rodriguez has endured weeks of harassment, intimidation, and humiliation. Where was your concern for her future when your son was making her life miserable?" The realization hit Danny's father like a physical blow. "Rodriguez, is she your daughter?" Principal Rodriguez nodded. "Yes, she is. But that's not why I'm taking this action. I would respond the same way if any student in my school was being treated this way. The fact that it's my daughter just means I have a personal understanding of the pain and fear that bullying causes." The room fell silent as the full weight of the situation settled on everyone present. They had been tormenting the principal's daughter, not knowing her identity, and now they were facing the full consequences of their actions. The police officer finished taking statements and informed Danny that he would be charged with assault. The charge might be reduced to a misdemeanor given his age and the circumstances, but it would still appear on his record. As the parents and their sons left the office, each facing a very different future than they had imagined that morning, Principal Rodriguez finally sat down at her desk. Maya approached her mother cautiously. "Mom, I'm sorry," Maya said quietly. "I never wanted this to happen. I tried to handle it on my own." Principal Rodriguez looked at her daughter with a mixture of love and sadness. "Maya, you have nothing to apologize for. I'm the one who should be sorry. I failed to protect you. I had reports, I had evidence, but I didn't act quickly enough." "You didn't know it was me," Maya replied. "I made sure of that." "That's exactly the problem," her mother said. "I should have been protecting all of my students, not just you. Every child in this school deserves to feel safe and respected. I let those boys continue their behavior because I thought it was just typical teenage conflict. I was wrong." Over the weekend, news of the incident spread throughout the school community. Social media buzzed with various versions of the story, but the core facts remained consistent. 3 popular athletes had been caught bullying a student and had assaulted the principal in the process. When school resumed on Monday, the atmosphere was completely different. Students whispered in the hallways, but not about Maya. They whispered about Jake, Trevor, and Danny, who were conspicuously absent from their usual spots in the cafeteria and hallways. Maya noticed the change immediately. Students who had previously ignored her now nodded in acknowledgement when she passed. Some even smiled or said hello. The fear that had followed her through the hallways was gone, replaced by something she'd never experienced before: respect. In the cafeteria, Maya sat at her usual table, expecting to eat alone as always. But to her surprise, several students approached her. "Hey Maya," said Sarah Chen, a quiet girl from her English class. "Mind if I sit with you?" Soon, Maya found herself surrounded by students she'd never spoken to before. They weren't there out of pity or because they felt sorry for her. They were there because they respected what had happened and wanted to be associated with someone who had stood up to the school's bullies, even if it had been through her mother's intervention. The conversation at lunch revealed something Maya hadn't expected. Many of the students had their own stories of harassment and intimidation. Some had been targets of Jake, Trevor, and Danny. Others had witnessed the bullying, but felt powerless to intervene. "I always wanted to say something," admitted Marcus Thompson, a sophomore who had been in the hallway during several of the documented incidents. "But I was scared they'd come after me next." "We all were," added Jennifer Martinez, a junior who had watched the cafeteria incidents. "Those guys had so much power in the school, nobody wanted to cross them." Maya realized that the bullying she had endured was part of a larger pattern of intimidation that had affected the entire school community. Her mother's decisive action hadn't just protected her, it had liberated dozens of other students who had been living in fear. Throughout the week, the consequences for Jake, Trevor, and Danny continued to unfold. Jake lost his football scholarship to State University when the college learned about his suspension and the pending legal issues. Trevor was cut from the basketball team and had to explain the situation to every college recruiter who had been interested in him. Danny's wrestling scholarship was revoked, and his family had to hire a lawyer to deal with the assault charges. The school board met to review the incident and unanimously supported Principal Rodriguez's actions. They issued a statement praising her quick response and decisive handling of the situation. The local newspaper ran a story about the incident, focusing on the school's zero-tolerance policy for bullying and the importance of administrator accountability. 2 weeks after the incident, Maya was surprised to find Danny waiting by her locker after school. He looked smaller somehow, his usual confident posture replaced by hunched shoulders and downcast eyes. "Maya," he said quietly, "I wanted to apologize for everything." Maya studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity or manipulation, but found only genuine remorse. "I know I screwed up," Danny continued. "I know I hurt you, and I know I ruined my own future. But I wanted you to know that I understand now how wrong I was. You didn't deserve any of what we did to you." Maya nodded slowly. "Thank you for saying that, Danny. It means something." "I'm transferring schools," he said. "My parents think it's best. But before I go, I wanted to make sure you knew that I'm sorry. Really sorry." After Danny left, Maya felt a sense of closure she hadn't expected. The anger and fear she'd carried for so long began to dissipate, replaced by something stronger: confidence. As the weeks passed, Maya began to come out of her shell. She joined the debate team, discovering that she had a talent for public speaking and logical argument. She started tutoring younger students in math and science, finding joy in helping others succeed. Most importantly, she began to see herself not as a victim, but as a survivor who had emerged stronger from her ordeal. Principal Rodriguez noticed the change in her daughter and couldn't have been more proud. During one of their evening conversations, she shared her own reflections on the incident. "You know, Maya, what happened that day changed me too," her mother said. "I realized that being a principal isn't just about running a school efficiently. It's about creating an environment where every student can thrive without fear." "Do you think they learned anything?" Maya asked, referring to her former tormentors. "I think Danny did," her mother replied thoughtfully. "His apology seemed genuine. As for Jake and Trevor, I'm not sure. But that's not our responsibility anymore. Our responsibility is to make sure nothing like this happens again." True to her word, Principal Rodriguez implemented sweeping changes to the school's anti-bullying policies. She instituted mandatory training for all staff on recognizing and addressing harassment. She created anonymous reporting systems that allowed students to report incidents without fear of retaliation. She established peer mediation programs and regular assemblies focused on respect and inclusion. The changes transformed Jefferson High School's culture. Students who had previously felt powerless now had multiple avenues for seeking help. The atmosphere of fear and intimidation that had allowed bullies to thrive was replaced by one of mutual respect and support. Maya's story became part of the school's legend, but not as a tale of victimization. Instead, it became a story about the power of standing up for what's right, even when the cost is high. Students learned that actions have consequences, that adults can be trusted to protect them, and that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. 6 months after the incident, Maya was elected to the Student Council, running on a platform of anti-bullying advocacy and peer support. Her campaign slogan, "Everyone deserves respect," resonated with students who had experienced their own struggles with harassment and intimidation. In her victory speech, Maya reflected on her journey from victim to advocate. "I learned that silence in the face of injustice is not strength, it's surrender. I learned that standing up for yourself and others is not just a right, it's a responsibility. And I learned that sometimes the people who seem the most powerless can create the most powerful change." As Maya looked out at the assembled students, she saw faces that reflected her own transformation. Students who had been victims had become advocates, bystanders had become allies. Fear had been replaced by hope, and silence had been replaced by a collective voice demanding respect